The upscale restaurant buzzed with evening diners, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. In a corner storage room, a young waitress sat hunched over, tears streaming down her face. A man in a simple button-down shirt walked in like any ordinary customer, taking a seat at a corner table. No one knew he was actually the wealthy CEO owner. The moment he saw her crying, an unexpected story began to unfold. Emma Carter, 24, clutched her mother's worn handkerchief as she tried to compose herself in the narrow storage room behind the kitchen. Her black uniform was perfectly pressed despite her meager salary, and her brown hair was pulled back in the regulation ponytail that made her look younger than her years. She'd been working at Bellacorte, one of the city's most prestigious restaurants, for 3 months, and every day felt like a battle for survival. The other servers treated her like an outsider, a small-town girl who didn't belong among the sophisticated staff who served the city's elite. "You're just temporary help," Jessica, the head waitress, had told her that morning. "Girls like you never last long in places like this." What Jessica didn't know was that Emma desperately needed this job. Every paycheck went toward her mother's cancer treatments, and losing this position would mean losing their apartment, their insurance, everything they'd fought to keep during her mother's illness. The evening had been particularly brutal. Richard Morrison, the floor manager, had spent the entire shift finding fault with everything Emma did. When a wealthy patron complained about the temperature of his wine, something completely beyond Emma's control, Richard had publicly berated her in front of the entire dining room. "This is unacceptable," he'd hissed loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Your incompetence is embarrassing this establishment." Emma had apologized, as she always did, swallowing her dignity along with her words. But when Richard announced that the cost of the returned wine would be deducted from her paycheck, money she couldn't afford to lose, she'd finally reached her breaking point. Now sitting alone with her mother's handkerchief, she whispered the words that had gotten her through every difficult day since her mother's diagnosis. "I will not give up. I will not give up." What Emma didn't know was that someone had been watching her struggle all evening. Daniel Hayes, 36, sat at table 14, wearing clothes he'd bought specifically to blend in. A simple blue shirt, khakis, and worn sneakers that made him look like any middle-class diner. As the CEO of Hayes Restaurant Group, Daniel owned 17 upscale establishments across 3 states, including Bellacorte. But tonight he was conducting one of his surprise undercover visits, something he did regularly to understand what was really happening in his restaurants. He'd seen Richard's treatment of Emma, witnessed the other staff's dismissive attitudes, and noted how the young waitress continued to serve every customer with genuine warmth despite the hostile environment she faced from her colleagues. When he'd seen Emma disappear into the storage room, clearly upset, Daniel had made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. He stood up from his table and quietly followed her. Daniel found Emma sitting on an overturned crate between stacks of dinner plates and linen supplies, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. For a moment he hesitated. As a CEO, he was used to maintaining professional distance, but something about her quiet desperation reminded him of his own struggles when he'd started in the restaurant industry 15 years ago. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you okay?" Emma looked up, startled, quickly wiping her eyes. "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't know anyone was back here. I'll get back to work right away." "You don't need to apologize," Daniel said, his voice kind. "I just wanted to make sure you were all right." "You looked upset." Emma studied his face, searching for the judgment or impatience she'd learned to expect from customers who witnessed her struggles. Instead, she saw genuine concern in his brown eyes. "It's been a difficult evening," she admitted quietly, "but I'll be fine. I have to be." Over the next hour, as the dinner rush slowed down, Daniel remained at his table, ordering simple items and observing Emma's interactions with customers and staff. He watched her serve a family with young children, patiently accommodating their special requests and cleaning up spilled juice without complaint. He saw her remember the coffee preferences of regular customers and notice when an elderly diner needed assistance reading the menu. Most importantly, he witnessed Richard's continued harassment. The manager seemed to take pleasure in finding fault with Emma's work, often contradicting himself just to keep her off balance. "Table 6 is waiting too long for their appetizers," Richard snapped at Emma, though Daniel could see from his vantage point that the kitchen was backed up and no server could have changed the timing. I'll check with the kitchen right away, Emma replied professionally, though Daniel could see her hands trembling slightly. When the elderly diner from earlier left a generous tip specifically for Emma, praising her attentiveness to his wife who used a wheelchair, Richard intercepted it. "Tips go into the group pool," he announced loudly, pocketing the money. "That's always been the policy." Daniel knew for a fact that wasn't true. Each server kept their individual tips at Bellacorte, but Emma simply nodded, not arguing, even though she'd clearly earned that money through exceptional service. After closing time, as Emma was wiping down tables alone while other staff socialized in the break room, Daniel approached her again. "You work very hard, he observed. Emma paused in her cleaning. "Thank you, sir. I do my best." "Why do you stay here?" Daniel asked quietly. "I've been watching tonight, and it seems like you're not treated very well by your colleagues." For a moment, Emma's professional mask slipped, revealing the exhaustion and frustration underneath. "Because I need this job," she said simply. "My mother is sick, and the insurance through this job is the only thing keeping us afloat. I can't afford to quit, no matter how difficult it gets." Daniel felt something shift in his chest. This young woman's dedication and dignity in the face of workplace bullying reminded him why he'd gotten into the restaurant business in the first place. Not just to make money, but to create places where people could work with pride and treat customers like family. "What would you change about this place if you could?" he asked. Emma looked surprised by the question. "I'm just a waitress, sir. I'm not really in a position to suggest changes." "Humor me," Daniel said gently. For the next 20 minutes, Emma shared thoughtful observations about customer service, staff training, and creating a more welcoming environment. Her insights were practical, compassionate, and showed a deep understanding of both employee and customer needs that impressed Daniel immensely. He left that night knowing he had some serious changes to make at Bellacorte. 1 week later, corporate headquarters announced a surprise all-staff meeting at Bellacorte. Emma arrived early, nervous about what the meeting might mean for her job security. The entire restaurant staff gathered in the main dining room, with Richard prominently positioned near the front, clearly expecting to be praised for his management. "I wonder what this is about," whispered Maria, one of the other servers. "Maybe they're finally promoting Richard to district manager." Emma sat quietly in the back, still wearing the simple black uniform that marked her as one of the junior staff members. She'd spent the week continuing to endure Richard's harassment while providing excellent service to every customer, just as she always did. When a man in an expensive suit walked into the dining room, everyone assumed he was the corporate representative they'd been expecting. But Emma's heart stopped when she recognized the face. It was the kind customer from the week before, the one who'd asked her about changes she'd make to the restaurant. "Good evening, everyone," Daniel said, his voice carrying easily through the quiet room. "For those who don't know me, I'm Daniel Hayes, CEO of Hayes Restaurant Group." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Richard's face went pale as he realized his behavior might have been witnessed by the big boss himself. "I've been conducting undercover visits to our locations," Daniel continued, "and what I discovered here last week was both deeply disappointing and incredibly inspiring." He walked slowly through the room, his eyes finding Emma in the back. "I witnessed management harassment, tip theft, and the systematic mistreatment of a dedicated employee. But I also witnessed something remarkable, a server who continued to provide exceptional customer service despite facing daily workplace bullying." Emma felt every eye in the room turn toward her. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment and fear about what might happen next. Richard stepped forward, his voice shaky but attempting confidence. "Mr. Hayes, I run a tight ship here. Sometimes tough management is necessary to maintain standards." "Tough management?" Daniel interrupted, his voice sharp. "Is that what you call stealing an employee's tips? Is that what you call publicly humiliating someone for problems beyond their control?" He turned to address the entire staff. "I watched Emma Carter work last week. I saw her accommodate difficult customers with patience, remember personal preferences for regulars, and go above and beyond to ensure every diner had a positive experience. And I watched as she was systematically undermined by her manager." The room was dead silent. Emma felt like she couldn't breathe. "Emma," Daniel said, looking directly at her, "would you please come forward?" On trembling legs, Emma made her way to the front of the room, certain she was about to be fired in front of everyone. Instead, Daniel smiled warmly. This young woman embodies everything we want in a Hayes Restaurant Group employee. She treats every customer like family, shows grace under pressure, and demonstrates the kind of integrity that builds lasting businesses. He turned back to Richard. You, on the other hand, have created a toxic work environment that drives away good employees and ultimately hurts our customers. Your employment with Hayes Restaurant Group is terminated immediately. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no words came out. Emma, Daniel continued, I'd like to offer you Richard's position as floor manager, effective immediately. Your insights about customer service and staff development during our conversation last week showed me that you understand what hospitality really means. Emma stared at him in disbelief. Mr. Hayes, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me turn this restaurant into the kind of place where employees are treated with respect and customers feel truly welcomed, Daniel replied. Through her tears, Emma managed to nod. The staff, minus Richard, who was being escorted out by security, burst into applause. Several of her colleagues looked ashamed of how they treated her, while others seemed genuinely happy for her promotion. There's one more thing, Daniel said, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to Emma. This contains all the tips that were stolen from you over the past 3 months, plus interest. No employee should ever have their earned wages taken from them. As Emma opened the envelope and saw more money than she'd expected to earn in months, she finally broke down completely, tears of relief and gratitude streaming down her face. The transformation at Bellacorte was swift and remarkable. Under Emma's management, the restaurant's atmosphere changed from tense and competitive to collaborative and welcoming. She implemented staff training programs focused on genuine hospitality rather than rigid rules, and created a mentorship system where experienced servers helped newcomers instead of hazing them. Customer satisfaction scores soared as diners noticed the difference in service quality and staff attitudes. Online reviews praised not just the food, but the warm, family-like atmosphere that made every meal feel special. It's amazing what happens when you treat people with dignity, Emma told Daniel during one of his regular check-ins. The staff works harder because they feel valued, and customers can sense the positive energy. Daniel watched with pride as Emma flourished in her new role. She'd taken business management courses online and showed a natural talent for leadership that surprised no one more than herself. The shy, intimidated waitress had become a confident manager who advocated fiercely for both her staff and her customers. Your mother must be proud, Daniel said one evening, as they reviewed the month's stellar performance reports. Emma's eyes lit up. She is. And the health insurance improvements you implemented means she can finally get the experimental treatment her doctors recommended. I can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity. What impressed Daniel most was that Emma had never let success change her core character. She still remembered every regular customer's preferences, still stayed late to help new employees, and still treated everyone, from dishwashers to wealthy diners, with the same genuine respect. The local business community took notice of Bellacorte's turnaround, and industry publications began featuring Emma's story as an example of promoting from within and recognizing hidden talent. You know, Daniel told Emma during a staff meeting 6 months later, when I first implemented these undercover visits, I was looking for problems to fix. I never expected to find someone who would teach me so much about what real leadership looks like. Emma smiled, looking around at her team, servers who now felt supported, kitchen staff who were treated as valuable contributors, and customers who returned again and again because they felt genuinely welcomed. You gave me a chance when no one else would, she replied. All I did was remember that every person who walks through our doors, whether they're staff or customers, deserves to be treated like they matter. That evening, Emma called her mother from her new apartment, one she could finally afford on her manager's salary, and shared the day's successes, just as she did every night. I kept my promise, Mom, she said softly. I didn't give up. 1 year later, at the Hayes Restaurant Group annual awards ceremony, Daniel took the stage with Emma beside him. The audience of managers, staff, and industry leaders listened as he addressed the crowd. Last year, I discovered that one person's tears in a storage room could reveal everything that was wrong with my company and everything that was right about the human spirit, Daniel said. Emma Carter didn't just become an exceptional manager. She reminded all of us that treating people with kindness and dignity isn't just good for business, it's what makes us human. Emma wiped away happy tears as the audience rose in thunderous applause. Sometimes our greatest strength is found in our most vulnerable moments, and one person's compassion can transform an entire workplace.